treatment. John continued to struggle. His story on how he got sober today, live on Recovery Monday. On the 17th day of June in the Lord's year 2013, I'm J. Michael McCoy, along with Lila Stafford and Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat. Welcome to this Monday edition of Recovering Monday, sponsored by Powell CDC. How you doing, Lila? Did you get through the weekend of Father's Weekend all right?
Yeah, ate too much, though.
Is your dad still living?
No.
So it was a celebration for
Jim.
For Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw something on Facebook that somebody must have made him a heck of a meal.
Yes, my son-in-law's a chef, and it was like a 5-course meal. It was fantastic.
Good. And Bob, how are you? We did a great show yesterday. Thanks for being a part of it.
Yeah, doing great. Yeah, it was a good show.
Good. All right, I want to introduce you to our guest today, John. And, you know, there are times when I ask for your faith in me to respect the fact that someone doesn't want to reveal their last name or something like that. No one would ever get on my program that's a fraud. No place in this world for somebody to come in and make up a story just to pull on your heartstrings. Every single guest that comes on Recovery Monday is the real deal. We use the word genuine and transparent. And I want to introduce you to John today. John, how you doing?
I'm fine, Mac. How are you?
Good. Did you have a good Father's Day?
We had a good Father's Day, had family over, and I have parents who are still with us that have been married for 64 years last week, so we're really happy for them.
Yeah, and you're a new grandpa.
And I just got as a new grandpa about 3 weeks ago, yes.
What's it like holding that new baby?
It's wonderful. He's precious.
Yeah, and the thing that we always think of from recovery is that without recovery, you'd never be holding that baby.
I wouldn't be around today to hold that baby.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't be married to Christy either. So
yeah, great gal he's married to. All right, let's start with where's home?
Home is here in West Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay. Graduated from Valley?
No, I'm from Centerville originally and moved to Des Moines about 22 years ago.
Okay, so you graduated from high school in Centerville.
Right, yes.
Were you drinking and drugging and doing all that in high school?
From the get-go.
Okay, so you were a farm boy or a city boy?
I'm a city boy.
Okay.
Lived on the edge of a farm.
lived on the edge of a farm.
on the edge of a farm.
There you go.
Now, he was friends with a friend of mine in high school, Cindy.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Okay. Small world. And so tell me what it was like in high school. When did you take your first drink?
I took my first drink when I was 14. We planned it. We went over to a friend's home. I think we drank quarts of Falstaff beer, and I was so sick that I couldn't walk for probably 2 days. And then the third day, I could hardly wait to get out and find some beer again the next weekend to go out again. And this was like in 1965.
Yeah. Was alcohol prevalent in your family?
We lived in the same community probably since before Iowa was a state, and I can see alcoholism jumping back through the generations of our family in every generation that I know of. Yes. So
was it around your house growing up?
No, my brother and my father are not alcoholic, so we weren't. But many other sides of our family were definitely alcoholic.
Do you think you trace it back through your mom's side?
Can't trace it through my mom's side at all. I don't see any alcoholism at all, but through my father's side, I could see it.
You know, that was one of the fascinating things about having Dee last week.
Yeah.
Is she's Dee Hummel. She's really into tracking that and figuring out how that gene got into her life.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So when you got that drunk and couldn't walk for 2 days, did mom and dad know?
Mom and dad were out of town. Yes.
How convenient.
So yes, it was, and so I was just so sick I couldn't hardly walk, and but it didn't deter me from going back out and using again, and so I used alcohol my first couple of years in the mid-60s, and then I found marijuana, and then I found other drugs, and progressed pretty quickly out through into college, and I think I did my first line of cocaine in 1971. And it was an epiphany, and I knew that was my drug of choice for the rest of my life.
You were truly smack dab in the middle of the love generation, weren't you?
Yeah. And we didn't feel that using drugs back then was a bad thing. Of course, we weren't aware of addiction at all, and I'd never heard of AA or any 12-step programs.
Sure.
At that
What
time.
were you
So-
looking for, Brad, when you were taking these drugs? Were you after a feel or?
Well, I was definitely. I love the feel of being high, but I also wanted to be in with a certain group of kids, and so all of my friends were drug users and used alcohol all through school, and then when I went to college, I just changed to a different set of friends who also used alcohol and
Yeah.
drugs. So yes,
And you felt more part of the group.
I always
Okay.
did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What did you feel like you were when you weren't high or drunk?
Out of place.
Okay.
Yes.
Odd duck.
The odd duck, very fearful all the time, although I would never show it. And I think rather shame-based about myself. I think that for some reason, and I don't know why, I was ashamed of who I was. And the alcohol and the drugs helped me not feel that way. And so they became a real way of life very quickly for me. Even by the end of high school, I was probably drinking pretty regularly.
Don't we hear that just almost every time?
Yep.
Just the alcohol made me feel normal.
Yes.
Is that a characteristic of an alcoholic, that the alcohol kind of fills in that space and therefore we feel normal?
Yes. I mean, I always say we have holes in our hearts and we're filling them with something, but it only works for a while and then it doesn't work anymore.
Right. It was the best thing that I had ever found. But it's good at first, and you kind of get married to it, and then after a while, it turns on you, and it becomes really ugly.
So when you said you were drinking every day in high school, had you advanced past Hams and Falstaff and into hard liquor, or
Most of the high school was just beer.
okay?
And then I really advanced when I left home for school. I started experimenting with psychedelics and LSD and amphetamine sulfates and just about it. It was a potpourri. I would try anything that was out
everything
there.
was out there.
Everything was out there.
Where'd you go to
yes.
school?
I went to Baylor University for
Oh,
a
my
couple of
heavens.
years, and I was really out of place there. And then I went up to University of Iowa and was up at Iowa and stayed in Iowa for several years. Yeah.
But the drugs and alcohol were just prevalent.
Oh, they were every day.
And you know
Yes.
what? You're really right, John, because we didn't know. We knew they were illegal, but we didn't know they were bad.
At the time, I just didn't think that I thought that I would probably. Well, I take that back. I don't think I ever did think I was going to get off them, but because I never thought I needed to get off the drugs and alcohol. So I thought it would just be who I am, and I'm kind of a wild guy, and it makes me do crazy things, and I get attention for it, and people know who I am. And
Were you the guy with the lampshade on his head?
I tried not to act stupid. I was kind of a serious guy, but I definitely wanted to have an aura about me.
But here's
And
the thing: you attract people that are like you, and so you were probably running around with a bunch of people that did the exact same thing you were doing, so you weren't really out of place or thinking it was wrong.
It took me down a lot of roads where I met a lot of people who I wouldn't normally have associated with if I had not been using drugs and alcohol. And some of those people were very scary people. They were tough and bad, and some of them are still in prison today.
Yeah.
What years were you at Iowa?
I was up at Iowa in the early 70s and 72, 74.
Okay.
Yes. So it was right in the middle of things, and it was a pretty liberal environment up there. You could do about whatever you wanted to do at the time, and it was drugs were pretty open up there, and there were no severe penalties at that time.
Yeah,
Severe penalties.
Do you ever remember being discovered, getting caught by a teacher or somebody in a air of responsibility that gave you heck but let you go?
I don't think I was ever caught by anybody for doing that, although I had many family issues with my father over what was going on. It was the unsaid word. We didn't talk about it, and yet we both knew what was going on. And he would take me in and he'd tell me, I don't understand why you act this way and why you're doing these things. And I'd promise him I'd never do it again. And the minute I'd walk out of his office, I knew that I was going right back out to do what I did.
So you were high in front of your father? Is that? Or
Many times but I didn't live much at home till after I was 18. But anytime I would visit for Christmas or holidays, I was back in the back using drugs and also drinking in front of them heavily.
Did you feel I found that when I would go back to my parents, I was under stress and pressure more than usual. And so the idea of not being high while there was unacceptable, even though my actions while high and being there were actually more unacceptable.
I always felt under pressure to succeed, and not because my parents pushed me to do it, but just because the family had done well. And we would do things like we would go home from Iowa City to Centerville for Christmas, and on Christmas Eve we ran out of cocaine, so we drove back to Iowa City at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's a 2.5 hour drive. By the time we got back, the party was over.
Yeah.
I had to go home, and guess what? I hadn't wrapped my presents. So
Yeah.
here I am, stoned and drunk downstairs at 8:30 in the morning trying to get my presents wrapped for the family. And that's the kind of stuff that really sticks with you that you don't feel good about.
Any ultimate embarrassing moments that you can recall with your family?
Well, I think there were several of them, yes. And the longer I drank, the worse they got. I remember at when I worked for my family for several years in Centerville, and we were out at the country club on the 4th of July, and I had been playing golf and drinking all morning, and I turned around and my mother said, "You're drunk," and I said, "No, I'm not," and tripped and fell over the bench flat on my back in the middle of about 200 people. And my mother told me to go home. So, and I did.
I'll bet. All right. John is our guest today, and he is, can I call you an original hippie?
I was a hippie,
With long hair? And
about 38 inches long.
Oh,
Yes.
wow. Okay.
Oh.
So original hippie, and so it's wasn't his fault because it was what society said was cool, right? And would you say you were more of were drugs your problem or alcohol your problem? Because if I understand it right, there's an alpha dog, there's an alpha male between drugs and alcohol. Somebody is the driving force, somebody is the supporting, or is that not true?
You mean I don't get what you're saying?
Well, I never did a lot of drugs, okay, but I drank, and that was consistent. Where I know guys who drugged and alcohol was a mix of it, but their problem was narcotics, not alcohol.
Right. So they're just it's just what they desire. But a lot of people they think that if you're an addict, you're an addict. It doesn't make any difference if you're an alcoholic or a druggie.
Oh,
because,
really?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It will switch. So if you think my only problem's alcohol and you try some drugs thinking, it won't do anything, most likely you'll become an addict.
Bob, when you testify in court in alcohol-related cases, how often is drugs involved also?
Well, usually we find, because many times within a laboratory they send in blood and urine, and we look and check for drugs in urine. I'd probably say when alcohol is involved, maybe 40-45% of the time.
Wow.
We also have other drugs, THC or marijuana or coke or meth. They're very popular, and so it's not uncommon. Benzos are pretty common now. A lot
Oxycontin.
of sleeping opiates. So we see a whole range. And I guess my question, John, is how do you fund this? How were you funding your habit?
Well, there were certain things that were going on that back in those days that I probably would rather not go into today. But I'm sure you can guess that we had large amounts of cocaine and drugs and marijuana and
Criminal.
well, I would say yes.
Yeah. Well,
definitely.
we all did.
It didn't seem to be very criminal early,
Right.
But then later on, even in the depths of my alcoholism and drug use, it seemed very criminal. Things changed, and mandatory minimums came in, and racketeering came in, and
But we're not going to get into that stuff. That's all right. When we come back, you just heard what his life was like. We'll talk a little bit more about what John's life was like, and then what happened. Treatment? Yeah. Outpatient for a month? No way, Jose. We're talking what? Almost a year?
Almost a year in treatment the second time.
The second time.
Yes.
All right, we're meeting John, Lila, and Bob are here. Father Tattoo producing. I'm Mac. Thanks for listening. Love this job. Couldn't do it without you. Right here on Recovery Monday, brought to you by Powell, CDC, and powered by WebcastOneLive.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
The dawn of a new era begins.
A father who is headed toward another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation, to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
"21 minutes after the hour on the 17th day of June in the Lord's year 2013. Thanks for Toby Mac and his Redeemed, our theme song here on Recovery Monday, brought to you by Powell CDC. Lila Stafford in the house along with Bob Montserrat, and of course we're being produced by Father Tattoo today. My guest is John. At this point, we're at age 22.
Yes, we're in the early 20s, mid-20s.
College was
yes.
fun, doing some drugs, maybe a little bit of stuff on the side that would not have been acceptable in today's world. But it got worse.
Oh, it was a continuing party that went on for days at a time, and there were times where we would stay up for 2 or 3 days. And you were talking earlier about the driving force. Cocaine was my driving force. Alcohol went along with it, and when I finally ended up in treatment for cocaine addiction, they looked at me and they said, "Well, Brad, you're an alcoholic."
Okay.
And I was stunned because I didn't think of it, because I didn't really like to drink unless I did cocaine.
Okay.
And cocaine, the alcohol and the cocaine would go together, and you'd get a certain high, and you could party all night long and
Go
do
on
things,
and on and on
go
and
on
on.
and on and on until the cocaine ran out. So,
And is it fair to say that money in your life was accessible? So going to work at 8, getting off at 5 was not a big issue.
there were periods in my life where money was very accessible, and there was periods where I didn't work, and then there were long periods of my life where I did work and went to an 8 to 5 job. Yes.
Okay. But during those times, were you still doing cocaine and drinking?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See, maybe it's just because I'm in radio, but I have never been. You know what never means? I have never been on the air with alcohol.
Yeah.
in all my years. Never. Even if I broadcast live from a bar, I am just completely convinced that the stupidest things would fall out of my mouth. They already do when I'm sober. But I just can't imagine having a job, and I never experienced that.
Well, I didn't do it very well, Max. So
Okay.
yes.
So yeah, I gotta ask the marriage.
Oh, okay.
In Mexico.
Yes.
I've heard this story.
I lived down in the West Coast for a couple years because I was trying to get away from Iowa because I thought a geographical location change would help me and I would get on the straight and narrow, but it didn't even phase what was going on. And so I had a lot of friends out in the West Coast, and we'd been partying up in L.A., and I ended up down in Rosarito Beach in Mexico about a day and a half later. And there was a bar called Husson's down there. Husson's,
Okay.
as I remember. And they had a battery where you could put your hands on the posts and put your feet in the stirrups, and they would amp you. And, of course, after drinking for 2 days, I thought that was a pretty good idea. And I got in it, and I don't remember anything the rest of the night, except I woke up with a young lady from San Diego in my hotel room the next morning. And I got up.
In Mexico?
In Mexico, yeah. And I said to her, hey, we were in Mexico, and she had happened to be in Mexico down at this bar. So I said to her, I looked at her, I had no idea who she was. And she told me her name, and I said, well, you have the same last name as I do. And she says, yeah. She said, we got married by a justice of the peace last night.
Oh, my heavens. Now, take me to that moment. Are you laughing?
No, I was stunned. First of all, I didn't know whether to believe it or not, and never really found any evidence that we had done it, but she said that we did. And so I did the good thing that all alcoholics did. I got my rear end on the other side of the border and got back in the United States again, and I never saw her again. Now, the thing about that was that I had to disclose that to my current wife, who's also recovering before we got married.
You didn't have to get it annulled?
I didn't even know where it happened. So
at this moment, you could be married to 2 women?
I hope not.
Okay. Yeah.
In my heart, I'm only married to one. So.
And this is what, 78?
Oh yeah, this is a lot in maybe 1978, 79.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, but that wasn't enough to make you stop.
Oh no, I never even considered stopping after that. That was just a good story to tell our friends.
Do you remember, John, the first moment that you said, maybe there's an issue here?
I was still in California, and I woke up one morning, and my current girlfriend had walked out on me because I hadn't come home for 2 days, and I picked up a phone and I called an AA hotline, and I started to talk to him, and I hung up, and then it took another 10, 12 years before I recontacted with them again.
Wow.
What made you call AA? Had you heard about it? Or?
I have no idea what happened to me at that time and that morning that I did make that phone call to AA, because it rather surprised me too.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the courage to continue on with it, and so I hung up on them mid-sentence, and then there was never a thought of that again for another decade.
So what happened in that decade?
Well, I continued to use really heavily, and the only thing I quit was probably smoking marijuana, but the cocaine use went on and on and on, and the alcoholism continued on, and I got to the point where I just got to be non-functional and I couldn't work anymore. And
life was unmanageable.
It was totally unmanageable. So I thought the best thing for me to do would be move back to Iowa City.
Now, you didn't get married again?
I was married during that time.
No, not to the girl in Mexico. Somebody else.
No. I had 2 marriages in the United States. I was really good at getting married and being charming, but I was terrible at staying married.
Why?
I was married to drugs and alcohol, and it was any case that there was a choice between doing something with my wife or something for my wife or my family. I always chose the drugs and alcohol every time. I mean, it just beat me 10 out of 10 times.
Sure.
Were they into alcohol and drugs as well?
No. I seem to marry people who weren't into alcohol and drugs. I don't understand why I did that. The people I dated were party people, and then I tried. Maybe it was my way of thinking I could marry my way out of my addiction.
Yeah.
I never thought of that until just now, but it might be true.
That might be.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So take me to your first treatment.
Oh, in
what year?
In '89, I was back in Iowa City again, and I was dating a gal that was probably 17, 18 years younger than me, trying to relive my college days, and it just fell apart on me, and I really couldn't function anymore, and the usage had gotten out of hand, and friends of mine had been out to Betty Ford, so my thinking was, well, I'll go to Betty Ford and maybe I'll meet someone like Liz Taylor out there, like I can't remember the guy's name, Larry something. Yeah, did, and so that was my main plan. But
what's that?
Oh, that person she met in rehab out there,
In
and Liz Taylor.
Oh, and then married him.
And married him, out of Betty Ford Clinic.
Okay, I remember that.
But I got sidetracked, and a friend of mine got me to go up to Minneapolis to Hazelden, and I went in there and did a 30-day treatment up there. I was in the TBO unit up at Hazelden, and the first thing that they told me was that I needed to quit using alcohol and drugs permanently, and I had no idea that that's what it was. I thought I was going to go up there and just get well and get a handle on this, and then I could
going to treat you to use responsibly.
Responsible usage, yes, absolutely, yeah.
Put that little governor in your head so you knew when to stop.
Right.
Ah, yes. I've heard that story before. And what happened after 30 days?
Well, they told me to stay away from old friends, old playgrounds, and go to AA meetings on a consistent basis. And so I went back and I went to old playgrounds and old friends, went to Kansas City to see The Who at Arrowhead Stadium and relapsed. And it was probably the worst 22 months of my life. It just was absolutely, I think I got to the point at that point where I was using to die. And fortunately, I had family members who cared about me. They weren't happy with me, but my mother and father and brother have always tried to help me and supported me. And they got me up to Hazelden the second time. And as I was telling you earlier today, I went back to my TBO unit. And I also want to say that the second time I went up there, they took the bottle and the freebase pipe away from me at the door of the detox center.
Wow.
I went up sober the first time I went and was had quit drinking and using, but the second time I flew in, I made them stop on the way up and get me a bottle, and they said, you have to come in, Brad, but you can't bring your bottle with you. And so I went in and was released from the detox center and had a seizure the next morning.
Wow.
Was back in detox again. And I went down to my TBO unit, and at that time, Hazelden had one of the only extended care facilities in the United States. And it was right across from where my unit was. And Hazelden is totally tunneled because of the bad winter weather, except for the extended care facility. And there's a short little walk that you have to go across. So we'd see these people, and I thought, I'm never going over there because those people are really messed up.
Yeah.
Well, they called my name on the intercom about 3 days after I was there, and I saw that the director of extended care facility was sitting in the office, and I knew it was coming up. So they asked.
You were going to the igloo.
I was going over next door. They wanted me to. Now, I could have said no and even left if I wanted to. Nobody forces you to do anything. But they sat down and talked to me about it, and I said, well, they said, what's your objection? And I said, well, it costs this was 22 years ago. They said it costs $5,000 a month to be over there. And the extended care facility director looked at me, and he looked at my sheet, and he said, well, you'll be saving money because you've got a $10,000 a month cocaine habit. So within about 20 minutes, I had my little bag packed, and I went over. And at that time, extended care was a co-ed facility. So we lived with women and men on different floors.
And you weren't able to go to the other floor.
Well, I actually ended up, there was too many men, so I ended up living on the women's wing.
Did you really? Yeah. Boy, you're drawing all the good luck when you come to think about it.
I thought I was, yeah.
All right. How long were you there?
I was up in at the extended care for almost 6 months, and then I went down to Fellowship Hall in St. Paul, which is a halfway house, and was down there for about another 3.5 months.
Okay.
And what I did was I drove cars back and forth for a car dealer, changing lots, and that was it. And then they wanted me to go to a sober house, and I put my foot down. I said, I'm not going to do that. And I moved back to Des Moines. 2 weeks later, I relapsed.
Oh, no. Alcohol.
What kept you there that long? What were they telling you that you wanted to stay? Why did you want to stay?
Well, I thought it was safe up there. I wanted to stay because I knew in that environment I wasn't going to use, but I just wasn't prepared to do the things that they were telling me to do when I came back out. My problem was that I've always felt that it was a period of discovery, but then getting out and going and really doing a 12-step program is your recovery period.
So you relapsed in 2 weeks, drugs and alcohol, same
Here,
way?
yeah, here in Des Moines. And then I got back into AA and did about 11 months. And I thought, I'm doing really well. And I got hold of some Iowa City friends of mine. I said, let's go over to the river I'm going to use, but I'm not going to tell anybody in Des Moines that I've used. And the problem with my plan was I did go over to Davenport and I did use, I didn't come back. So it was pretty obvious to everybody in the program that I'd relapsed
How
again.
long were you in Davenport?
I was probably over in Davenport drinking for about 5 days and then wandered back to Des Moines again. So,
All right, when we come back from our next break, you got one more treatment, or is that it?
no, that's the end.
The
That's
end of the treatment.
treatments, yes.
So you come back from the Quad Cities. Was that the end of your drinking career?
There was one more relapse after that, and then I walked into an AA meeting in Johnston and was sober since that day.
And what was that date?
August 6, 1993.
8/6/93. And so that's your sobriety birthday.
Right, I'll be coming up on 20 years here this
Yes, you
summer.
will. Congratulations.
I've been thinking about it.
All right, when we come back, what is John's life like now? We certainly have heard what it was like. We have certainly heard that it was unmanageable. We have certainly heard that alcohol and drugs controlled John. What kind of guy did he turn out to be, and what is his life like now? It's Recovery Monday with Lila Stafford, Bob Montserrat, produced by Father Tattoo. Our guest is John, and I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Love this job, couldn't do it without you. Right here on Recovery Monday, powered by webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
The dawn of a new era begins.
A father who is headed toward another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation, to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
Yeah, the old Rachel. 22 before the top, and of course, Salem Radio Network News at 4 o'clock, followed by Pastor Michael Mudloff with True Blue. Tomorrow, we will have Tom Coates. We'll do a little talking politics with Shane Vanderhart. And then on Friday, Ryan Jorgensen in the house for View from the Pew. Reich Places will, of course, be here on Wednesday and Thursday. Lila Stafford in with Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat, and, of course, Father Tattoo producing today. My guest is John. Began drinking Falstaff beer at age 14. And then in 1993, so how old were you in 93?
About 40.
40?
Yes.
So at 40, what made you so sick and tired of being so sick and tired that you were willing to quit?
Exactly what you said. I was just so sick and tired of it that, and we'd been through the treatments, and I knew that the treatment was great and it helped me, but I'd have to do something on my own, and I just surrendered. I don't know why it happened to me, but I had been drinking in the morning up in Johnston, and I had gone home to take a nap that afternoon, and I woke up and I thought, I can't do this anymore. And there was an AA meeting at the Lutheran Church on Merle Hay Road, and I walked into that meeting that evening at 8 o'clock, and I stood out in the parking lot and told everybody that came in I was an alcoholic, and they told me I was at the right place and to come on inside.
Yeah.
And I've been sober since that day.
And you said you surrendered to what? To whom?
I don't think I think I surrendered to the group of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
At the time. I knew in my heart that AA had a great track record, and there were people who were getting sober, and I don't think I had much of a concept of a higher power at that time. And so my really first surrender was just to the group of AA. And the first meeting I was at, I actually found a sponsor who had just moved here from Alaska. And also want to say that Lila's husband, Jim, has been my sponsor for 19 years now after my first sponsor moved. And an old friend of mine was at that meeting. He told me, he said he wasn't going to go to that meeting that night, and for some reason he jumped out of his car and went to that meeting and didn't see me until he heard my voice.
Yeah.
And we reconnected, and we're still friends today.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, and let me make a point here. There are so many people that get this screwed up idea that the higher power spoken of in those 12-step meetings must be a creator or a Christ or something like that. It's not that way. And what John just said is perfect. Most people, when they fall into this 12-step program, find that the room gives them the power and the willpower to surrender. Now, I know you think I just said an oxymoron, but listen to me again. The room gives you the room gives you the willpower to surrender. It takes a lot of willpower to surrender.
It does. I think there was a man who was pretty infamous in Des Moines. His name was Jimmy O.
Jimmy O.
And he used to do a lot of ranting and raving at the meetings and pounding the table. But he said something that always stayed with me to this day. There's a lot of power in being powerless.
Yeah.
And the longer I've been sober, the more I've understood that.
Yeah.
I can tell who's going to relapse just by
Really?
People that don't surrender. They're
Oh,
constantly fighting with
Yeah.
themselves, with everybody around them, and it's not just surrendering one time. It is you
Daily.
constantly
Daily
have to
surrender.
Every
not
morning.
just daily. Sometimes at the beginning, it's
Yes.
every minute, every
Right.
hour.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, when I first got sober, the serenity prayer came out of my mouth more common than please and thank you. I mean, I
Absolutely.
just had to say it constantly, but it works.
My first sponsor told me that we'd work steps 1 through 9, but it would be that he had done the 10th, 11th, and 12th steps all the time from the get-go.
Yeah.
And so I was doing the 10th step every day, and I got really tired of saying I'm sorry to everybody all the time.
Yeah.
It tends to help you change your behavior. I was sitting at a meeting in probably in my first 6 months of sobriety, and a lady that we know is still in the program today talked about changing your behavior and your mind will follow, and that really hit me as something that I understood because I never could change my attitude towards alcohol or the way I felt. But when I started changing my behavior, my mind came along.
Yeah, and by the way, for those listening, we're talking about stuff that you don't know. The 10th step is continue to make personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. One of the things that a person who's using doesn't take responsibility for their actions,
Right.
and therefore makes somebody else take responsibility for our actions. And one of the things that we learn right out of the bat is admit your own mistakes.
Right.
But not I'm sorry. What is it?
What an amends means is that
Yeah.
I'm changing.
Right.
I'm going to change the way I'm doing things. But people around you are sick and tired of you saying I'm sorry. They've heard that before.
Right.
So this is about I'm changing the way I'm doing things.
Yeah, and for those of you who are not involved in a 12-step program because you don't need to, work step 10 a little bit in your life. See what happens in your life when rather than saying I'm sorry to somebody over and over, you simply say, I'm going to amend my actions and my words. I'm going to mend our relationship back with something other than just words, and that's going to be my actions. So just so you know when we're talking about
That's why no one
steps.
ever hears me say no. I just it's hard to say I'm going to change my way, and I won't say it unless I really mean it. So to do that is hard.
Now, what's your sobriety birthday?
January 1st, 1986.
That must have been a heck of a New Year's Eve party.
Yes, and I'm so mad that I didn't get sober the day before because it would sound like I was sober a whole other year.
85.
Yes.
All right. In the middle of this, you got married and got divorced.
Well, since I've been sober, I've been married once.
No, but before you got sober.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
you had the gal in Mexico.
Well, there's one before that.
Oh, there's one before that.
And then the gal in Mexico, then another wife.
Okay.
And then I was a bachelor for about 10 years. And so the first 4.5 years or so in recovery, I didn't date at all. I just did things with the group and with people. I mean, we dated casually, but not any serious dating or anything.
Well, and that's kind of an unwritten rule, isn't it? That you're not
Yes,
supposed to.
for at least a year.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We really try to push that because people need to think about themselves before they're entangled with somebody else.
Yeah. Now, for those of you sitting at home with a critical ear, that's not a rule to be in AA. There is only one rule in AA, and what is that?
That you have a desire to stop drinking.
Desire to stop drinking.
And it was that line where all the pressure in my first meeting went away because I thought, oh my gosh, what are the rules going to be for me to be in this? And they said the only requirement for membership is a desire to quit drinking. And I said, well, I've had that for years, so I could do that. So you spent the first, what'd you say, 4.5 years sober?
Right. I thought I was a poster boy for the 12-step program because when you live alone, you don't have any of the problems. There's no family around or anything.
Right.
And what I had done is make it a living amends to my parents, who are still around today. I think I said that earlier, and rebuilt those bridges with them. My father told me one day, he said, I don't know if God answers people's prayers, but I think he answered your mother's prayers.
Oh,
And
that's sweet.
yeah. And so we have a good relationship today, and I have a brother that I have a good relationship with. And I met my wife in a parking lot at the same church I got sober.
Really? That church in Johnston?
The church in Johnston in the parking
That's
lot.
St. James, right?
I think it's St. James,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And my wife, Christy, who is also in the program, who has about 17 years of sobriety, had come to that meeting. She wasn't a regular. And a friend of ours introduced us out in the parking lot. And we went out on a date after that, and we've been together ever since.
How long
then.
How long had she been sober at that meeting?
About 2 years at
Okay.
that meeting.
All right.
Yeah.
Was it love at first sight?
We really liked each other a lot. Yes.
Yeah. You guys make a great pair.
We enjoy. We have a lot of fun.
All right. When we come back, some things for you at home. Perhaps there is no alcoholism in your own life, but you know somebody there is. Believe it or not, this past Sunday in church, 10 people sitting in a pew, it's almost guaranteed that 1 to 1.5 of them have some type of alcohol or addiction problem. And the reason we do Recovery Monday, we share people's stories because those stories are the connections we have to our Creator. They're the directions and connections we have with God in His DNA. And there's something in John's story that you needed to hear today. Maybe you've already heard it. Maybe you'll hear it next, live here on Recovery Monday. Brought to you by Powell CDC on webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
A father who is headed toward another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
Recovery Monday on this, the 17th day of June in the Lord's year 2013. Michael Mudloff comes after Salem Radio Network News at 4 o'clock. Lila Stafford, along with Bob Montserrat, my co-host, Father Tattoo producing, and our guest today has been John. John was a hippie right out of the 60s, put everything he could in his nose or in his arm or in his throat, and finally on the 6th day of August in 1993, he, and what was the word you used? Surrendered to a higher power, which at that time for you was the room.
And I'd have to say, Mac, that at the time I surrendered, I didn't realize I was surrendering.
Okay, what you were giving up?
I was just desperate, and I think I made a decision that I would just do whatever that they told me to do in those meetings, and I didn't know what they were going to tell me to do, and I didn't know much of, except what I learned in treatment, and that I just go along and see what happens.
Any DUIs or anything like that?
I had one DUI, and that's it, and no other criminal record.
So you really were, what I would say is you were led by the Holy Spirit to surrender.
Well, I was.
But you don't have to make it
right
Christ-based if you don't want to.
I had an epiphany that day to go over to that church, and it was the right thing to do. And it's worked out ever since. I've been very stable, and I've had the same job for 20 years. I'm self-employed, and
any urges, any particular things or people you can't do or be around?
I didn't go. We have season tickets to Iowa football games. I didn't go to a Iowa football game for 7 years.
Wow.
Because I just couldn't.
Jim and I still don't go for that reason.
Can't be in the parking lots and all the drinking and going on. And then after about 7 years, I took my stepdaughter over to a game, and it was just fine, and I didn't have a problem with it. But even things like money machines, the sound of the money coming out of a money machine would make me like Pavlov's dog. I'd salivate.
Really?
Just the sound of it would trick me off
because you'd go to the ATM to get money to go buy drugs and alcohol.
To buy drugs and alcohol, right, all the time. And so it was just a daily occurrence. And so I had there was about a year and a half I couldn't use an ATM machine. I had to go in the bank. So
now, and we'll meet your wife at some point, but you said Christy suffered with desires for 10 years.
She had other things going on, and but was really had a tough time. And I didn't understand why I kept saying, "What's taking you so long? It's been so much easier for me."
Yeah.
But she's around 10 years. Something happened to her, and she got treatment for another issue, non-alcohol related, and has just been great ever since. Wow. And I would say that that our foundation of AA has made us have a very good marriage.
I think she says about this. She said the same thing that I said about around our 10-year anniversary, that we weren't really working a good program.
Right.
And then and it's not unusual to have other addictions, and like mine's food, and that really at 10 years I went to treatment because I was a mess and not working a really good AA program.
Even though you'd been sober for...
I could fool anybody. I mean, on the outside, I looked like I had everything together, looked like I was working a program, and I wasn't.
I've seen other people in the 12-step programs that have had gambling problems that have just destroyed them. They don't drink, but they gamble, and codependency problems and eating disorders. So there's a lot of...
Bob, biologically, okay, the way we're created inside, what is it that makes some of us susceptible to addictions and others just nothing?
Well, there's a lot that has the environment, how you're raised, what people have said to you as you're growing up. If anybody said that you're not good enough or you're dumb or you're stupid, there are many things that we grow up with that creates a void within us, and something has to fill that.
I'll tell you something funny. You all know, you don't know my wife, I think, or maybe have you met her?
I've met her, yeah.
Okay, but you know my wife, and you know my wife's beautiful. She's tall. She's slender. She's just a gorgeous woman. She thinks she's fat. You know why? Because her Uncle Gordy, when she was 3 years old, pinched her cheek and says, "There's my little fat girl." And she has never forgotten that. Yep. Once.
Yeah.
And I don't think that woman's ever been more than 25 pounds over, teenage weight. But she'll tell you that.
And sometimes you don't even know that somebody said, you may have forgotten, but that stays with you, whatever that is, and you carry that.
Yeah.
And so when you carry that, you have to try to prove them wrong.
Right.
In some way.
Disconcerting. Not disconcerting. I can't think of something. I'll think of it anyway. All right. Now I'm going to be stuck on that. Something evidence.
Contempt prior to investigation.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah. So it goes with, what do you fill that void with? Alcohol, drugs, food. I mean, what is that? Video games.
So if an alcoholic, and I'm talking about gene oriented here, the disease part. If an alcoholic has something to fill emotionally, but they're never around alcohol, they might take up another addiction simply because they need to fill the void. Or are they eventually going to find alcohol?
Well, I think what you're saying is there's a void that has to be filled. What do you fill it with? And then you can, like people, when you were alone, John, it was a problem. It was easy for you to do what you were going to do. When you were with people, it was a little harder. Right.
Yes, right.
So when you had positive people around you, then it was easier for you to do what you were, or to stay away from it.
Yes.
But once you were alone, you didn't have any encouragement, you didn't have any positive support, and therefore you went back to your old ways.
Right. And when I finally got sober, my social world revolved around not only going to meetings on a regular basis, but going out to eat dinner with people in the program. Talking to people in the program daily.
It's kind of an accountability thing.
Exactly. That's exactly what Jim tells me all the time. We talk about accountability.
Yeah, that old adage, 90 meetings in 90 days is really important.
I think it's still important, and I don't see a lot of people doing it today. Although I know Christy asks all of her sponsorees to do 90 and 90. And
but their idea of what 90 and 90 is weird.
You remember the back of my book. I've got everything for the first 2 years, every meeting written down. All right. What does this mean for you at home? If you're not an alcoholic or you're not a drug addict, why did you just spend time listening to this? Well, there was something within John's story that you needed to hear. And maybe it's something like Bob was talking about that's buried kind of deep down there. And maybe we scratched, a little surface today. I'm sorry. I love you. I didn't mean to hurt you. Put it to prayer and see what God wanted you to learn out of that. Maybe it has nothing to do with you. Maybe it has something to do with a child or a parent or a friend at church or maybe one of your pastors, because we're all susceptible to sin. And that's what alcoholism is. It's acting upon our sin. Have a wonderful day. I will see you tomorrow. Lila, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Powell CDC. Bob Montserrat, thanks for being here. Father Ted, too, thanks for producing. And John, thank you very much for being my guest. I look forward to having you back again. Until we see each other again, just do one thing for me, would you? Just a little thing, would you? Just pray.